Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the most amazing sight he had ever seen. Through the main screen, Centauri Prime filled their view like a glowing jewel against the black of space. The planet was huge, 3 times bigger than Earth, and covered in cities that sparkled with lights of every color. Massive space stations floated around it like metal moons, each one bigger than any human city. "First time seeing the Coalition capital?" asked Admiral Lisa Carter as she walked up beside him. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Jake had worked with her for 5 years but had never seen her look nervous before. Today was different. "Hard to believe we made it this far," Jake said. 3 months ago, humans had been alone in the galaxy. Now they were about to meet with the most powerful alliance of alien species that had ever existed. The Galactic Coalition had ruled space for over 10,000 years. Dr. Sam Rodriguez looked up from his tablet where he had been reading reports about the alien species they were about to meet. "The data we have is incredible," he said. 12 different species, each one evolved in ways that seem impossible. The Vorthak have natural armor that can stop plasma weapons. The Luminari don't even need ships to travel between stars. Jake nodded. He had read the same reports but still found it hard to believe. Humans had struggled just to reach the nearest star system. These aliens had been crossing the galaxy while humans were still learning to make fire. The communication system came to life with a sound unlike anything they had heard before. It was deep and rumbling like rocks grinding together. "Human vessel, you are cleared to dock at Station 7. Follow the guidance beacons and do not deviate from the assigned path." "That would be a Vorthak speaking," Sam said, checking his notes. "They're the military leaders of the Coalition, 8 feet tall, covered in scales harder than steel, and they've never lost a war." The New Horizon followed the glowing path toward one of the smaller stations. Even the small one was massive compared to anything humans had built. As they got closer, Jake could see other ships docked there. Some looked like living creatures with smooth curves and organic shapes. Others were geometric and precise, made of crystal that caught the light and split it into rainbows. A few seemed to be made of pure energy, flickering and shifting as they moved. "Look at that," Lisa said, pointing at a ship that seemed to be changing shape as they watched. "Intelligence. Reports say that belongs to the Morphic Collective. They can alter their molecular structure at will." Jake tried to imagine meeting beings who could change their bodies like humans change clothes. Everything about this mission felt impossible, but Earth had no choice. Humanity needed resources and protection, and the Coalition was the only source of both in the known galaxy. The docking procedure took longer than expected because the station's systems had to adjust to accommodate human technology. Their ships used different power sources, different communication frequencies, and different environmental controls than anything in Coalition space. Jake heard the docking crew talking in several alien languages, and none of it sounded friendly. When they finally stepped off their ship, the first thing that hit them was the smell. The station recycled air for dozens of different species, and each one had different needs. The mix was overwhelming. The second thing was the gravity, which felt wrong in ways that made walking difficult. "Welcome to Coalition space, humans," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Jake looked around but couldn't see who was speaking until a shimmer in the air began to take shape. The Luminari representative materialized in front of them, a being made of golden light in roughly human form. "I am Coordinator Veltar," the being said. Its voice was like music played through crystal. "You are to follow me to the council chambers. The High Arbiter will see you now." They walked through corridors filled with aliens that Jake had only seen in reports. Insectoid Katani moved in perfect formation, their movements synchronized, like parts of a machine. Tall, thin ethereals floated rather than walked, their robes moving as if underwater. Stocky granite folk left small cracks in the floor with each step. Every species they passed stopped to stare at the humans. Some looked curious, others seemed amused, and a few appeared openly dismissive. Jake heard clicking sounds and electronic whistles that he assumed were alien laughter. "They're talking about us," Sam whispered. He had been studying alien languages during the journey. Most of it isn't very flattering. The council chambers were enormous, designed to accommodate species of different sizes and environmental needs. The ceiling was hundreds of feet high, and the floor was divided into sections with different atmospheres. Some areas were filled with water for aquatic species. Others glowed with radiation that would kill a human in seconds. High Arbiter Zethkalar dominated the center of the room. The Vorthak leader was even bigger than the reports had suggested, standing nearly 9 feet tall and covered in dark green scales that looked like armor plates. His eyes were yellow and cold, and when he spoke, his voice filled the chamber. "So, these are the humans," he said, and there was no warmth in his tone. "The newest species to reach space travel. We have reviewed your request for membership in the Coalition." Jake stepped forward. This was the moment everything depended on. "High Arbiter, humanity comes before the Coalition seeking friendship and cooperation. We offer our skills and dedication in exchange for guidance and protection." Zethkalar made a sound that might have been laughter. Other council members joined in, creating a chorus of alien amusement that echoed through the chamber. "Your skills," the High Arbiter repeated. "What skills could a species like yours possibly offer us? You have no natural armor like the Vorthak. You cannot travel at light speed like the Luminari. You lack the collective intelligence of the Kitani, or the matter manipulation abilities of the Morphic Collective. You are slow, weak, and short-lived." Lisa stepped forward, her military training keeping her voice steady despite the insults. "We may lack individual advantages, but we make up for it with determination and adaptability." "Adaptability," said another council member, this one speaking through a translation device that made every word sound mechanical. "An interesting concept from a species that has existed for such a short time." Zethkalar raised one massive clawed hand and the chamber fell silent. "The Coalition Council has decided to grant humans limited membership status. You will receive mining rights to asteroid fields in the Outer Rim systems. You will not have access to advanced technologies or prime trading routes. You will follow all Coalition regulations and submit regular reports on your activities." Jake felt his heart sink. Limited membership was barely better than being ignored completely, but it was better than nothing. At least humanity would have a foothold in galactic civilization. "Do you accept these terms?" Zethkalar asked. "We accept," Jake replied, though the words felt heavy in his mouth. "Then welcome to the Coalition, humans," the High Arbiter said. "Try not to embarrass yourselves too badly." As they were escorted back to their ship, Jake could hear the alien laughter following them through the corridors. The galaxy had made its judgment about humanity, and it wasn't impressed. 3 years had passed since humanity joined the Coalition, and Commander Ryan Phillips was tired of being treated like a second-class citizen. He stood in the control room of Mining Station Alpha 7, watching human crews work twice as hard as any other species just to meet their basic quotas. The asteroid field stretched out before them, full of rocks that other species considered worthless. "Another complaint from the Vorthak Overseer," said his assistant, handing him a datapad. "Says we're behind schedule again." Ryan looked at the numbers and shook his head. "We're actually ahead of schedule. They just keep raising the targets every month." He had learned that complaining to Coalition authorities was pointless. Humans were expected to be grateful for whatever scraps they were given. On the other side of the station, Lieutenant Nicole Barnes was doing work that officially didn't exist. Her job title was Communications Officer, but she spent most of her time studying Coalition military records. What she had found worried her more each day. "The same battle formations for 3,000 years, she muttered, scrolling through combat reports. Every major war the Coalition had fought followed identical patterns. The Vorthak formed the center, with their heavy armor and weapons. The Luminari provided fast strikes from the flanks. The Kitani coordinated everything with their hive mind efficiency. It worked because every species knew what to expect from every other species. Nicole had been a military strategist before joining the space program, and everything she saw made her uncomfortable. The Coalition fought wars like humans played chess, with established rules and predictable moves. It worked when everyone followed the same rules, but what happened when someone didn't? Down in Engineering Section C, Pete Collins was breaking rules that could get him expelled from Coalition space. He had a small team of humans secretly studying pieces of old Coalition technology they found floating in the asteroid fields. Officially, they were supposed to turn everything over to the authorities. Unofficially, Pete wanted to understand how it worked. "This weapon system is incredible," said his partner Jenny Walsh, holding up a damaged plasma rifle. "But look at these settings. It's designed to fight against specific types of armor and shields. Change those variables even slightly, and it becomes much less effective." Pete nodded. He had noticed the same thing with ship components, communication devices, and defensive systems. Coalition technology was powerful but inflexible. Each piece was built to work perfectly against known threats and known allies. There was no room for surprises. The first real test came when long-range sensors detected something new approaching Coalition space. The Skarathi were a nomadic species that lived on massive fleet ships. They had never been part of the Coalition and had no interest in following galactic laws. Their ships appeared at the edge of rim space and immediately began attacking isolated outposts. The Coalition response was swift and predictable. Admiral Kethmore of the Vorthak military dispatched a standard battle group to deal with the threat. 50 heavy cruisers arranged in traditional formation, supported by fast luminary interceptors and coordinated by Kitani command ships. It was the same formation that had won victories for thousands of years. The first battle was a disaster. Coalition forces formed their battle lines and waited for the Skarathi to engage in proper combat. Instead, the enemy scattered into small groups that attacked from unexpected angles, hit supply lines, and disappeared before Coalition forces could respond. When the Vorthak ships turned to face one group, another would attack from behind. When the Luminari tried to pursue, they found themselves flying into traps. Dr. Emma Stone watched the battle reports from her psychology lab and saw patterns that others missed. She had spent 3 years studying how different alien species thought and reacted. The Coalition had become predictable because each species always responded the same way to the same situations. The Vorthak always formed defensive lines when attacked, she explained to anyone who would listen. The Luminari always try to outflank enemies. The Kitani always coordinate through central command nodes. After thousands of years, these responses have become automatic. But the Coalition leadership didn't want to hear about psychological weaknesses. They increased the size of their fleets and sent more ships using the same tactics. The results were the same. Skarathi raiders continued to hit targets across the rim while Coalition forces struggled to catch them. The attacks escalated when the Skarathi realized how limited Coalition responses were. They began targeting mining operations and trade routes, knowing exactly how Coalition forces would try to protect them. Human settlements in the outer rim found themselves under attack with no protection coming. "They won't help us," Ryan said, during an emergency meeting of human station commanders. "To them, we're expendable. They'll protect the valuable worlds and let the rim burn." That was when humanity began to change. Without orders from Earth or permission from the Coalition, human settlements started organizing their own defense networks. Mining ships were fitted with weapons salvaged from asteroid debris. Work crews were trained in combat tactics that Pete Collins found in old human military databases. Nicole Barnes started sharing her analysis of Coalition military doctrine with other humans. "Every species in the Coalition has become specialized," she explained. "They're incredibly good at what they do, but they can't adapt when situations change. The Skarathi are winning because they're not following the rules." The breakthrough came when a group of Skarathi raiders attacked a human mining convoy near the Kepler asteroids. The Coalition had promised protection, but their nearest ships were 3 days away. The human convoy was on its own. Captain Linda Hayes commanded the lead mining ship, and she had been studying everything Nicole Barnes had written about unconventional tactics. When the Skarathi ships appeared, she did something no Coalition commander would have considered. Instead of forming a defensive line, she ordered her ships to scatter. The Skarathi raiders had planned for standard Coalition responses. They expected the mining ships to group together and try to fight in formation. When the humans spread out and began using asteroids for cover, the attackers found themselves confused and separated. What happened next became legend in human space. Hayes used her mining equipment as weapons, launching chunks of rock at enemy ships. Her escort fighters didn't try to engage in formal dogfights, but instead used hit-and-run tactics that the Skarathi had never seen from coalition forces. When the raiders tried to regroup, they found human ships attacking from directions they hadn't expected. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the Skarathi retreating. It was the first time anyone had successfully defended against their raids. Coalition observers couldn't understand what had happened. The humans had broken every rule of proper space combat, but somehow they had won. Word of the victory spread quickly through human settlements. More importantly, it reached the attention of coalition military analysts who suddenly realized they had a problem. The Skarathi were adapting their tactics based on coalition predictability, but now someone had shown that different approaches could work. High Command ordered a review of the battle, and Nicole Barnes found herself explaining human tactical thinking to alien officers who had never considered that there might be alternatives to traditional warfare. You fight like every engagement is a formal duel, she told them. But war isn't a duel, it's survival, and sometimes survival means breaking the rules. The aliens listened politely but didn't seem to understand. They had been following the same successful patterns for so long that they couldn't imagine doing things differently. The idea that their greatest strengths might also be weaknesses was beyond their comprehension. But in the shadows of coalition space, humanity was beginning to realize something important. They had been given the worst assignments and the most dangerous territories, but that had also given them something the other species lacked: freedom to experiment. While the coalition continued to fight the Skarathi using traditional methods and continued to lose, humans began developing new ideas. They studied every battle, analyzed every failure, and asked questions that no one else thought to ask. The galaxy still saw them as primitive miners barely worth noticing. That was about to change. General Alex Turner received the encrypted message while he was having breakfast in his quarters on Luna Base. The Coalition Council was requesting increased mining quotas, while Skarathi raids were making human settlements impossible to defend. He read the message twice, then deleted it and activated the communication system that officially did not exist. Project Wildcard is now active, he said into the encrypted channel. All department heads report to Facility 7 immediately. Facility 7 was hidden inside an asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into a research station. No coalition sensors could detect it, and no official records mentioned its existence. For 6 months, the best human minds had been working there on a project that could either save humanity or get them expelled from galactic space forever. Captain Maria Santos was already waiting in the main conference room when the others arrived. She had spent the last year studying every recorded battle in coalition history, and her conclusions were disturbing. They fight the same war over and over again, she said as the meeting began. The Vorthak form heavy battle lines. The Luminari provide fast strikes, the Katani coordinate from command ships. Every species has their role, and they never deviate from it. Commander Tony Baker had been working on the technical side of the problem. His team had been designing ships and weapons that could operate outside coalition parameters. Their technology is impressive, he admitted, but it's specialized. Vorthak shields are designed to stop plasma weapons and particle beams. Luminary sensors are calibrated to detect standard ship configurations. Change the variables even slightly and their advantages disappear. The most important person in the room was Dr. Helen Wright, and her presence was highly illegal. She had been a coalition researcher for 15 years before defecting to humanity 6 months ago. Her knowledge of galactic technology was invaluable, but helping humans would be considered treason by her former colleagues. The coalition has not fought a real war in over 1,000 years, she explained. All their recent conflicts have been against other coalition members using the same technology and the same tactics. They've forgotten how to adapt because they've never needed to. Sergeant Danny Clark had been quiet during most of the meeting, but when he finally spoke, everyone listened. He was a former special operations soldier who had studied military history from every human culture. "We're thinking about this wrong," he said. "We keep trying to match their strengths instead of using our own. Humans have been fighting unconventional wars for thousands of years. We know how to be unpredictable. Alex Turner nodded. That's exactly what Project Wildcard is about. We're not trying to become better Vorthak or faster Luminari. We're going to fight like humans. The project had several phases. First, Maria's team would continue analyzing coalition weaknesses and develop specific countermeasures for each species. Every battle formation, every standard response, every predictable tactic would be cataloged and countered. Second, Tony's engineers would design equipment that operated outside galactic norms. Instead of trying to build the most powerful weapons, they would focus on versatility and unpredictability, ships that could change their configuration mid-battle, weapons that fired unconventional projectiles, defensive systems that worked in ways coalition sensors couldn't detect. Third, Danny would train human crews in tactical approaches that had never been used in space. Guerrilla warfare, psychological operations, misdirection, and asymmetric combat would all be adapted for space battles. The goal was to fight in ways that coalition forces couldn't predict or counter. The first breakthrough came when Tony's team developed modular ship designs. Traditional coalition vessels were built for specific roles and couldn't be changed. Human ships could reconfigure their weapon systems, sensor arrays, and even their basic shape depending on the situation. A mining ship could become a fighter, a transport could become a bomber, and a scout could become a command vessel. Look at this, Tony said, showing a holographic display of their new design. The same basic hull can be fitted with 12 different weapon configurations. Coalition sensors will identify it as one type of ship, then be completely unprepared when it performs a different function. The weapons research was even more revolutionary. Instead of focusing on raw power, human engineers developed projectile systems that coalition defenses weren't designed to handle. Kinetic harpoons that could punch through energy shields, electronic warfare packages that confused alien targeting systems, and gravity manipulators that turned asteroids into weapons. Dr. Wright provided crucial intelligence about coalition defensive systems. Vorthak armor is nearly impenetrable against energy weapons, she explained. But it's never been tested against sustained kinetic impacts from multiple angles. Luminary ships can dodge anything they can see coming, but they rely entirely on their sensors. Blind them, and they're helpless. The psychological warfare research produced the most disturbing results. Emma Stone had joined the project and was developing profiles of how each coalition species would react to unexpected situations. The Kitani hive mind is their greatest strength and their greatest weakness, she reported. Disrupt their communication network and the entire species becomes paralyzed. They literally don't know how to function as individuals. Training began in hidden facilities throughout human space. Volunteer crews from mining ships and transport vessels learned to fight in ways that would horrify coalition commanders. They practiced ramming attacks, suicide runs, using civilian ships as weapons, and targeting non-military infrastructure. Every human military tradition that the coalition would consider dishonorable became part of the curriculum. The first field test came when a Skarathi raiding party attacked a human supply convoy near the edge of coalition space. Instead of calling for help or trying to run, the convoy commander activated new protocols that had been distributed to all human vessels. Captain Bob Miller commanded the lead transport ship, and he had been secretly training for this moment for months. When the Skarathi ships appeared, he did something unprecedented. Instead of trying to fight or flee, he broadcast a message on all frequencies, claiming that his ships were carrying a deadly plague that would kill anyone who boarded them. The Skarathi had never encountered psychological warfare before. They spent precious time trying to determine if the threat was real, during which human ships repositioned themselves and prepared for battle. When the raiders finally attacked, they found their targets had vanished. Miller had used an old human trick called playing dead. His ships powered down all systems and drifted like debris while the Skarathi searched for them. When the enemy ships separated to investigate what appeared to be wreckage, the humans powered up and attacked from point-blank range. The battle lasted 20 minutes and ended with the complete destruction of the Skarathi raiding party. No human ships were lost, and the tactics used were so far outside coalition experience that the official report was classified as impossible. Word of the victory reached Coalition High Command within hours, and the response was immediate confusion. The battle data made no sense according to established military doctrine. Ships didn't pretend to be dead, crews didn't use deception as a primary weapon, and transport vessels certainly didn't destroy military raiders through tactical superiority. High Arbiter Zethkalar personally reviewed the combat recordings and demanded an explanation from human representatives. Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as humanity's official liaison, found himself trying to explain concepts that had no equivalent in coalition thinking. "Your people fought without honor," Zethkalar accused. "They used deception and trickery instead of meeting their enemies in honest battle." "They used the tools available to them," Jake replied carefully. "Our ships aren't as powerful as Vorthak cruisers or as fast as Luminari interceptors. We have to be creative." The High Arbiter was not satisfied with that explanation. The Coalition has maintained order for 10,000 years through adherence to proper military protocols. If every species began using such tactics, chaos would result. But privately, some Coalition commanders were beginning to ask different questions. If humans could defeat Skarathi raiders using unconventional methods, what did that say about conventional methods? The raiders had been winning battles against traditional Coalition forces for months, but they couldn't handle a single encounter with human innovation. Admiral Lisa Carter, now serving as Earth's military representative to the Coalition, began receiving unofficial requests for information about human tactical thinking. Officers from various species wanted to understand how transport ships had outfought military raiders, but they weren't allowed to ask officially. The requests were always the same. Could humans explain their methods without actually teaching them? Could they share their innovations while keeping them secret from potential enemies? Could they help the Coalition win against the Skarathi without admitting that help was needed? Lisa's response was always the same. Human tactical methods are integrated with human psychology and technology. They can't be separated from our culture and applied to other species. What she didn't say was that Project Wildcard was just beginning. The victory against the Skarathi raiders had been a test of basic concepts. The warning came at 0347 Galactic Standard Time when long-range sensors detected the largest fleet movement in recorded history. Over 3,000 Skarathi ships had emerged from deep space and were moving toward the Coalition's core worlds. The attack was coordinated across 17 different star systems, using jump drive technology to appear simultaneously throughout civilized space. High Arbiter Zethkalar stood in the Coalition Command Center and watched the tactical displays. With growing alarm, red markers representing enemy forces covered the holographic map like a spreading infection. In over 2,000 years of military service, he had never seen anything like it. "How many ships are we tracking?" he asked his intelligence officer. "Current. Count as 3,400 and rising," came the reply. "They're using some kind of stealth technology we haven't seen before. More ships keep appearing as our sensors adjust." The Skarathi had learned from their previous encounters with Coalition forces. Instead of small raiding parties, they had assembled their entire civilization into one massive invasion fleet. Every ship they possessed, from massive dreadnoughts to small fighters, was now heading toward Coalition space with clear hostile intent. Admiral Kethmore of the Vorthak Fleet Command activated the emergency protocols that had not been used in centuries. The Coalition Grand Fleet, consisting of over 10,000 ships from all member species, began mobilizing from bases across the galaxy. It was the largest military response in galactic history. "Form Standard Battle Formation Alpha 7. Kethmore ordered. "Vorthak heavy cruisers will anchor the center line. Luminari interceptors will provide flanking support. Kitani command ships will coordinate from protected positions. All species will take their designated roles." The plan was massive, impressive, and completely predictable. Coalition forces arranged themselves in the same formation that had won battles for thousands of years. A solid wall of firepower that could destroy anything that challenged it directly. But the Skarathi didn't plan to challenge it directly. As Coalition forces formed their battle lines at the Kepler Junction, the main hyperspace route to the core worlds, the enemy fleet did something unprecedented. They scattered. Instead of one massive formation approaching the coalition defenses, 3,000 Skarathi ships split into hundreds of small groups that attacked from every direction at once. Some hit supply lines, others targeted communication, relays, and many simply vanished into deep space where coalition sensors couldn't track them. "Where are they going?" demanded Zeth Kalar as enemy markers disappeared from the tactical display. "Unknown, High Arbiter," replied the tracking officer. "They're not following any standard attack pattern." That was when the desperate call reached Earth. Admiral Lisa Carter was reviewing training reports from Project Wildcard when the encrypted transmission arrived from Coalition High Command. For the first time in their relationship, High Arbiter Zeth Kalar's voice carried something she had never heard before: fear. "Admiral Carter, the Coalition formally requests human assistance in the current military crisis," the message began. "Your species has demonstrated unique tactical capabilities that may prove valuable in supporting our main battle efforts." Lisa read the message 3 times before its implications sank in. The proud Coalition was asking for help, though they were trying to make it sound like they were offering humans a chance to assist in their certain victory. The reality was clear. Traditional Coalition tactics weren't working against the Skarathi invasion. She activated the secure communication system that connected all Project Wildcard facilities. "All units, this is Admiral Carter. Operation Breakthrough is now active. All human vessels are to proceed to designated coordinates immediately." Captain Jake Morrison received the order while commanding the human exploration fleet near the Outer Rim. His force consisted of 50 ships, a tiny number compared to the thousands of Coalition vessels mobilizing for battle. But these 50 ships represented 3 years of secret development and training. "Set course for the Kepler Junction," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed, and activate all stealth systems." The human fleet that approached the battle zone looked nothing like traditional Coalition vessels. The ships could change their configuration during flight, appearing as miners, transports, or research vessels until the moment they revealed their true capabilities. Their weapon systems were hidden inside modular components that could be reconfigured based on tactical requirements. When they arrived at Kepler Junction, Coalition observers expected the humans to take support positions behind the main battle lines. Instead, Jake's ships immediately spread out across the entire battlefield in patterns that appeared random to alien observers. "Human fleet, take position in Sector 7 behind the Vorthak heavy cruisers," ordered Admiral Kethmore. "You will provide rear guard support while proper military vessels engage the enemy." "Negative, Coalition Command," Jake replied. "Human forces will operate independently using our own tactical protocols." The response caused confusion throughout the Coalition chain of command. Military vessels didn't operate independently. Every species had specific roles and followed specific procedures. The idea of ships acting without central coordination was alien to galactic thinking. But Jake's ships were already moving, and what they did next defied everything the galaxy knew about space warfare. Instead of forming battle lines, they scattered across the combat zone like seeds in the wind. Each ship operated alone, with its own mission and its own authority to adapt to changing conditions. The first major engagement occurred when a group of Skarathi fighters attempted their standard hit-and-run tactics against what appeared to be a human mining vessel. The enemy expected to make a quick attack and escape before the slow civilian ship could respond. Instead, the mining ship suddenly reconfigured itself into a combat vessel bristling with weapons that Coalition sensors had never seen before. Captain Sally Brooks, commanding the vessel, had been waiting for this moment for 2 years. "Target their engines, not their weapons," she ordered her gunners. "I want them alive and confused." The human weapons fired projectiles that Coalition technology couldn't identify. Instead of energy beams or plasma bolts, Brooks was using kinetic harpoons connected to her ship by molecular cables. The Skarathi fighters found themselves physically tethered to their target, unable to escape or maneuver. What happened next was recorded by dozens of Coalition observers and became the foundation of a completely new understanding of space warfare. Brooks used the captured enemy fighters as weapons, swinging them like flails to attack other Skarathi ships. The technique was brutal, effective, and completely outside the experience of both sides. Across the battlefield, other human ships were demonstrating equally revolutionary tactics. Commander Ryan Phillips used holographic projectors to create false targets that drew enemy fire, while his real ship attacked from unexpected angles. Lieutenant Nicole Barnes employed electronic warfare systems that made Skorathi ships fire on each other by confusing their targeting computers. The breakthrough moment came when the Skorathi command ship was identified. Coalition forces had been searching for it using traditional sensor sweeps and communication intercepts, but the enemy vessel remained hidden among thousands of decoys. Nicole Barnes found it using a completely different approach. Instead of looking for the command ship directly, she analyzed the attack patterns of individual Skorathi fighters. By tracking the timing and coordination of their movements, she identified the source of their orders through pure mathematical analysis. Target located, she reported to Jake Morrison. Transmitting coordinates now. The attack on the Skorathi command vessel demonstrated everything that made human warfare different from galactic norms. Instead of a massive assault by heavy ships, Jake coordinated a precision strike using vessels that appeared to be civilian transports. The transports approached the enemy command ship while broadcasting false identification signals and pretending to be refugees fleeing the battle. When they reached point-blank range, they revealed themselves as heavily armed combat vessels and destroyed their target in less than 30 seconds. The loss of their command ship created chaos throughout the Skorathi fleet. Unlike the Kitani hive mind, which would have been paralyzed by such a loss, the Skorathi began fighting as individuals without coordination. But they had never trained for individual combat, and their effectiveness collapsed immediately. Coalition observers watched in amazement as the massive Skorathi invasion fleet, which had been winning battles for months, suddenly fell apart under pressure from 50 human ships using tactics that made no sense according to established military doctrine. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with the complete retreat of Skorathi forces from Coalition space. Over 800 enemy ships were destroyed or captured, while human losses totaled 0 vessels and minimal crew injuries. In the aftermath, as Coalition commanders tried to understand what they had witnessed, High Arbiter Zeth Kalar found himself facing a reality that challenged everything he believed about military power and galactic politics. How was all he could manage to say when Jake Morrison reported to Coalition Command? "We changed the rules," Jake replied simply. "Your people fight wars like formal duels with established procedures." The emergency session of the Coalition Council convened 12 hours after the Battle of Kepler Junction ended. Representatives from all member species gathered in the Great Chamber on Centauri Prime, but the usual formal ceremonies were abandoned. Everyone wanted answers to the same impossible question. How had 50 human ships accomplished what 10,000 Coalition vessels could not? High Arbiter Zeth Kalar stood before the assembled delegates, and for the first time in his 2,000-year career, he struggled to find words. The proud Vorthak leader had built his reputation on military excellence and strategic thinking, but everything he thought he knew about warfare had been proven wrong in a single day. "Fellow council members," he began, his deep voice carrying through the chamber. "Yesterday we witnessed something unprecedented in galactic history. The human species, using methods we do not understand, achieved total victory against an enemy that had defeated our combined forces repeatedly." Murmurs of confusion and concern rippled through the audience. The insectoid Kitani delegates clicked their mandibles in agitation. The ethereal luminary flickered with uncertainty. Even the usually confident Morphic collective seemed disturbed by implications they couldn't fully grasp. "The battle data makes no logical sense," continued Zeth Kalar. "Human vessels operated without central command, used weapons our sensors couldn't identify, and employed tactical approaches that violate every principle of civilized warfare. Yet they achieved complete success with 0 losses." Captain Jake Morrison sat in the human delegation area, watching alien faces struggle with concepts that challenged their fundamental understanding of military power. 3 years ago, these same beings had dismissed humanity as primitive minors barely worthy of notice. Now they were forced to confront the possibility that their 10,000-year-old civilization had serious flaws. High Arbiter spoke Coordinator Veltar of the Luminari, its voice like crystal bells. "We request detailed analysis of human tactical methods so that all coalition forces can benefit from their innovations." Jake exchanged glances with Admiral Lisa Carter, who gave him a slight nod. They had prepared for this moment during the flight back from Kepler Junction. The coalition wanted human knowledge without admitting they needed it, but humanity was no longer willing to be treated as junior partners. "Honored delegates," Jake said, rising to address the council. "Human tactical methods cannot be simply transferred to other species. They are integrated with our psychology, our technology, and our cultural approach to problem solving." "Explain this integration," demanded General Krextor of the Granite Folk, his stone-like features showing rare emotion. "If your methods are superior, they can be learned." Dr. Emma Stone, now serving as humanity's chief xenopsychologist, activated a holographic display that showed brain scan comparisons between humans and other species. "Each coalition species has evolved specialized advantages that shaped your military thinking," she explained. Vorthak natural armor led to defensive strategies. Luminary energy forms created emphasis on speed and mobility. Katani hive minds developed perfect coordination. The display showed neural pathway diagrams that illustrated how different alien brains processed tactical information. These specializations created incredible strengths, but they also created limitations. "After thousands of years, your species think in patterns that have become inflexible." "And humans?" asked Zethkalar, though his tone suggested he already suspected the answer. "Humans evolved as generalists," Emma continued. "We have no single overwhelming advantage, so we developed adaptability as our primary survival trait. We think in ways that can change based on circumstances, rather than following fixed patterns." The implication sent shockwaves through the chamber. Every council member understood that Emma Stone was suggesting their greatest evolutionary advantages had become weaknesses through over-specialization. Admiral Kethmore of the Vorthak Fleet Command stood up, his massive frame radiating frustration. "Are you claiming that our military doctrine, perfected over millennia of successful warfare, is inferior to your chaotic methods?" "Not inferior," Jake replied carefully. "Different. Your methods work perfectly when fighting opponents who follow the same rules. But the Skarathi didn't follow your rules, and neither did we." The debate that followed lasted 18 hours and changed the course of galactic civilization. Species that had not questioned their military approaches for thousands of years suddenly found themselves wondering if there were better ways to fight, to think, and to solve problems. The breakthrough came when Zethkalar made a decision that stunned everyone present. The proud Vorthak leader, who had never admitted weakness or asked for help from anyone, formally requested human assistance in reforming coalition military doctrine. "The High Command recognizes that our traditional approaches have limitations," he announced. "We formally request that humanity establish a training program to share tactical innovations with interested coalition personnel." The chamber fell silent. In 10,000 years of coalition history, no established species had ever asked newcomers to teach them anything. The request represented a complete reversal of galactic power structures. "We accept," Jake said, though he knew the implications would echo across human space for generations. "But our training methods require fundamental changes in how students think about warfare and problem solving." Within 6 months, the Galactic Tactical Academy was established on New Terra, humanity's first major colony world. Officers from every coalition species came to study human military concepts, and the results transformed galactic warfare forever. Captain Maria Santos became the Academy's first director, teaching courses in adaptive strategy and unconventional warfare. Her students included Vorthak generals who had commanded fleets for centuries, Luminari coordinators who could process information at light speed, and Katani commanders who represented the collective wisdom of billions of minds. "Forget everything you know about proper military procedures," she told her first class of 200 alien officers. "We're going to start with a simple question. What would you do if all your advantages were taken away and you still had to win?" The classes were unlike anything in galactic educational history. Students learned to think like guerrilla fighters, to use deception as a weapon, to turn weaknesses into strengths, and to adapt their tactics based on changing circumstances rather than predetermined plans. Lieutenant Nicole Barnes taught intelligence analysis using human psychological profiling techniques. Her alien students learned to predict enemy behavior by understanding cultural patterns and individual motivations, rather than simply following tactical computer projections. Commander Tony Baker ran engineering workshops, where officers learned to modify their equipment for unexpected purposes. Coalition technology was powerful but inflexible, and human methods showed how the same tools could be used in dozens of different ways. The most revolutionary classes were taught by Sergeant Danny Clark, who introduced alien officers to the human concept of thinking outside the box. Students learned about historical human battles where seemingly impossible victories were achieved through creativity and unconventional approaches. The transformation wasn't limited to military applications. Coalition species began applying human adaptability concepts to trade negotiations, scientific research, and diplomatic relations. The rigid specializations that had defined galactic civilization for millennia slowly gave way to more flexible approaches. Dr. Helen Wright, the former coalition researcher who had defected to humanity, established the Interspecies Innovation Institute. Her work focused on combining the specialized advantages of different species with human adaptability concepts to create solutions that no single species could develop alone. The results were remarkable. Vorthak engineers learned to make their armor systems adaptable rather than just strong. Luminary scouts developed reconnaissance techniques that combined their natural speed with human stealth concepts. Kitani commanders discovered how to maintain coordination while allowing individual initiative. 2 years after the Battle of Kepler Junction, High Arbiter Zeth Kalar stood once again before the Coalition Council. But this time, his message was very different. Fellow delegates, he announced, I am pleased to report that coalition forces have successfully repelled invasions from 3 different hostile species using tactical methods learned from our human allies. Our military effectiveness has increased by over 400%. The chamber that had once been filled with alien laughter at human expense now buzzed with respectful attention as Zethkalar continued his report. More importantly, we have learned that strength comes not from perfecting our existing advantages, but from our ability to adapt and change when circumstances require it. Admiral Lisa Carter watched from the human delegation area and reflected on how much had changed. 3 years ago, humanity had been dismissed as primitive miners. Now they were recognized as the species that had revolutionized galactic civilization by teaching everyone that the greatest advantage was the willingness to change. The final scene took place on the observation deck of the new Coalition headquarters, where mixed-species crews trained together using human tactical principles.